Hi there. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to the Catalyst Astrology Report. We do a live broadcast every Friday here on YouTube to look at the astrology of the weekend and the week coming up. And just this morning, late last night, depending on where you are, about 12:30 a.m. Eastern, we had our third quarter moon in Taurus in conjunction with the Pleiades, and we are now coming into our last quarter of this lunar cycle that started with a new moon in Leo. So welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you for being here. Hello to the Starseed Fellowship and the Catalyst Classroom. I just posted the first session of this month's content for those tier 2 subscribers on Subscribestar. We're going to be checking out Chiron this month, and so I'll flash a bit of a flyer here in just a moment. I have a few promotional things that I want to share with you, readings in the Catalyst Classroom. Just know that everything you need in order to explore these services or options more is going to be linked in the description box below, and it's going to be labeled correctly, and will get you where you need to go in order to access or explore what I'm bringing up more. So how are people feeling? It's been quite the week. It seems like that is just par for the course at this point in reality, is that it is just intense. But we do have the sun in Leo. It's its home territory, so this is extra intense right now. And the third quarter moon, we're going to talk about the astrology of that today, but one thing I really want to bring out is how present, at least in my personal experience, and I'd be curious to know how other people, especially Pleiadian, Starseed, identified folks are feeling, is they're very present right now in a capacity that's very nurturing and supportive, and there is a lot of healing that is happening. And we have a sun that's about to go into Virgo after the end of this weekend. Mercury, the ruler of the sign of Virgo, is in Virgo. There's going to be this massive opposition with Mercury and Neptune in its retrograde in Pisces here also coming into Monday. So when we talk about Virgo, and we are talking about the 6th house in astrology, which is truly where you get your shit together, right? This is at least the way that I read it. Because this is where we're really challenged to mature, to reconstitute ourselves. It's one thing to feel the energy of our creative potential combust and releasing with Leo, right? Our voice, the resonance of our heart, and that comes through some type of expression, either creatively, artistically, something that brings joy out of us, right? That's the 5th house. And moving into the 6th is where the rubber meets the road, right? This is where you take that artistic passion and you cross the threshold into a professional, right? And there's actually a really good book. It's called The War of Art, not The Art of War, although that is worth the read as well. But The War of Art is a book written by a professional writer, and it talks about specifically this transition from novice or amateur artist or creative into a master, right? And no matter what you're doing, right? Whether it be spiritual, whether it be a healing process. And this is very important to consider with maturity as well, because this is what happens in the 6th house in Virgo, is the ripening, the maturing, right? The seed of the next cycle is encased in the ripening fruit. And in a healing process, we can be very impatient for that healing to come, because it's uncomfortable, it's painful, physically painful, right? Some people are having, like me, very physical responses right now to energetic templates and patterns that are so long overdue to be flushed away. But right now it is the experience of it on a collective level, of course, and also what we each need to do and what it's going to take to really commit to that process within ourselves, because that process is truly what we offer to the social contract, Libra, the 7th house, and this upcoming equinox in September, when the sun reaches 0 degrees Libra, is going to be conjunct Mercury in its retrograde back into Virgo, and it's going to be a lot more brilliantly and I don't want to say just mentally powerful, because sometimes the power of Mercury really kind of gets diminished by these mundane explanations of what it represents in the chart. And I'm not suggesting that the normal functioning of your nervous system, for instance, and your own mental pathways is somehow mundane or less than spiritual. But boy, the power within Mercury as the magician, both in Gemini and Virgo, is very, it is really, truly, that's that first planet that is going around the sun. And somebody actually had just brought up to me in conversation, like a colleague of mine, and my Reiki master teacher, had mentioned some other content that she was watching. I think it was the Leo King, and talking about how, Mercury makes its revolution in 88 days. And there's that 88 that just keeps coming back, that octave that represents the infinity cycle that is turned, you turn the 8 on its side and you get the infinity cycle. You get the octave in the major scale, right? You get, the completion in some ways that allows us to transmute into something even more than ourselves. So, and I say material selves, right? The fusion of our material essence. This is a good segue into Chiron, actually. It's a bridge. So Mercury is not to be underestimated in terms of where it all starts for us, right? Is in our own individual consciousness, in its growth, in its development, in its expansion, and in its discipline, right? Virgo is where we find the star Alpha Draconis in the zodiac sign. So Thuban or Alpha Draconis, and I'm doing this because I'm following the pathway of the Draco constellation, right? The undulating serpent or dragon. Thuban or Alpha Draconis is in the tail of the dragon, much like the South Node, right? It's a propulsion. It is pushing forward to some sort of perfection, some sort of spiritual blending, right? Virgo is mutable earth. You are literally using your resources to reorganize your physical reality in line with a consciousness that is mature enough to step into relationship with life, okay? So, boy, it's just, there's patience, young Padawan, right? And I say this to myself, right? This is my higher self coming in and being just as almost like this clipboard, right? And I've had some visitation with this imagery very recently in my dreamscape, this part of me that is like, much more wise, much more experienced, and she's got this clipboard and she's like, okay, let's get on with it, right? We have a schedule to keep. And much like the planting or the growing season, especially in a seasonal environment, when you get into Virgo season, right, this is the ripening of the fruit on the branch, right? And it seems like things aren't happening, but I assure you they are. They're all happening under the soil. They're happening in the soil. The root system is pulling in the resources from the soil to support the growth of the fruit. Because the time where the sun was the primary source of energy for this plant life form is now passing. Because we're also passing, we've already passed the June solstice. So we know that we are in the waning period, at least in the northern hemisphere, the waning period of the amount of light per day. And so the goal is to continue on with the evolution of life, and that means having a legacy or something to pass on or to offer into relationship. And we all know that relationship on every level is how you actually transmute in this density, right? In third density, it's all about the transmutation and the alchemy of our polarity. So Mars is going to come into Gemini this weekend, coming into Monday as well. I've talked about this a couple times. I'm sure other people are bringing it up as well. I'm even like just subconsciously just burning sage right now. It's really important that you realize the potential for Mars in Gemini, because it's going to be retrograde at these last degrees of Gemini and be in this sign for quite a while. And so this is, again, if we are still in this regressed state of this or that, we are just going to be triggered beyond belief to act or to be rash or to just output towards some sort of false dichotomy. And I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't make commitments to things, because that's the part of Gemini that is really essential. I mean, in the tarot, the Gemini card is the Lovers, and it's the idea of this commitment to the spiritual self, committing to the merging or the blending or coming out, right? And the blending is Virgo, and patience is so essential right now for what is maturing, even when you're frustrated. So the Pleiadian aspect that's coming in with this third quarter moon, and I can only speak to my reading of the astrology and of course my own experience as a Pleiadian starseed, where that's in my chart, what's happening in my life, what I am personally working on. And they came in really clear as I was doing self-healing, right? So I was doing Reiki with myself. I was really pulling in, and then, you know, my toroidal field, I was really working on it, using Reiki as a means to do so. And they just came in just so lovingly and supportive, right? They were just boosting the field that I was already creating as a result of my willingness to create that channel of harmonic and divine energy, right? I mean, that's what Reiki really is the ability to channel, you know, the highest source energy through your connection really to the planet, right? Now, I first learned Reiki, and it was always about the channel in the crown chakra pulling down or being open to receive. And that's still very much a part of it. But one thing that I have in my own practice over the last almost 20 years, 23 years really, this December. So one thing I have noticed in my practice is that it is so much more powerful when the Earth Star Chakra is activated. And that's something that I didn't really work as directly with until I was starting to get my later attunements, which were in 2018, 2019. So I spent a long time, you know, learning the Reiki energy through my bodywork practice. And it wasn't until I was starting to step into a whole new role, right? And there's that maturing. It took 15 years of that process maturing before I was ready to step in and to activate a part of myself that had really, I feel like the Pleiadian grief around this as well. And there are many starseeds that I work with, just to put it out there, that have their natal Chiron you know, in conjunction with the Pleiades. And so there is deep grief around so many of these stories, especially the Atlantean story. I cannot stress enough how much this third quarter moon is representing the tension in that moment coming around again, and being almost more afraid of what could be because of old wounds and traumas, to the point where it's almost shutting, you know, some people have shut down from, you know, allowing themselves to rise in consciousness again, because it seems to not necessarily work out for the best, at least in that situation. And to realize that things are different this time, right? And we've made them different. We have intentionally come in and created situations in this reality intentionally to give ourselves more opportunities and for humanity to actually make this transition with as many of us as possible, right? The Earth's doing it already. And if she has to shake every single one of us off, that's going to be what happens. And that's what happened with Atlantis. And you know, there's a sense of self-destruction that could have probably been mitigated with, but really, could it have been? Would we have learned anything if we just, you know, those ET counterparts had just come in, especially the Pleiadians, and been like, you know what, we're going to fix this. It's not the MO of any benevolent group of beings, and you can connect to that energy and that type of relationship very easily in your own life. If you have children, right? Or if there are people in your life that you are assisting as a guide or in a counseling type of position, or just, you know, is even yourself, you know that you have to figure it out and see it and feel it for yourself before you really embody the wisdom of that experience. So actually, this is a great segue into some of these promotional things I want to offer here. So let's, I'm going to start making some changes to this screen here. So, all right, guys. how are people feeling? Like, let us know, in the chat. Let us know. There we go. Let us know in the chat. Let us know in the comment section even. I'm sorry, guys. Like, multitasking is certainly not is not something I'm really good at in this particular situation. So let me try to focus here for 1 second on what I'm actually doing, which is, again, a Virgo trait through and through. Focus on what is right in front of you instead of getting lost in all of the details. Because if you're lost in the details and you haven't learned discernment or discrimination or any of those types of energetic hygiene things, then you are going to just be, you're going to be flinging yourself all around this dichotomy that has been intentionally created. So let me find, there we go. And there is a little bit of space weather I want to share with you. I mean, all we need to really say about it at this point is the fact that it's popping off like crazy. So I'm going to check in with the stream real quick. The physical issues are everywhere. My husband is having back issues again, and my daughter is having major dizzy spells. Oh yeah, like there's a lot of physicality. And remember, Taurus and the second house is the body. And so when we look at the chart, we're going to start looking into Venus and where she is right now, the planet Venus, because she rules this sign. And Uranus is here, going to station retrograde by the end of this coming week. So there's a lot, and the North Node is here, right? The North Node of the Moon in Taurus as well. So, and also, if you remember, and then I'll get into Catalyst Classroom. If you remember the eclipse from June, boy, this is exactly where the sun was, where the moon is now squaring the Leo sun. So again, the patience. We were impatient then. It was so intense then. And now we're just like, oh God, now we got to like go through the process of actually putting the pieces where they belong. VZ says, I woke up thirsty, then threw up the water. This has not been the greatest morning. Just going to be grateful the migraines aren't worse. Yeah, the solar weather is off the hook, right? And we're going to talk about that and how this creates these types of symptoms, incredible inflammation, right? Migraines, right? Which is this enhanced and increased circulation into your skull, basically. And I'm really sorry. It has not been the greatest of mornings, VZ. And, I've received your email, by the way. I just want to mention this while you're here, and I will be responding next week when I'm going to start sitting down with your chart and do our beginner Starseed package. So there will be no ministry stream on Monday. I'll be going out of town. I'm going to Gettysburg, actually. This is a whole thing that I will talk more about on the ministry when we get there on Tuesday. Feeling myself a bit like a flower ready to bloom. That moon in Virgo haps, and the Draco makes sense too. Yeah, totally makes sense. And there's a lot of Draco starseeds. I have Draco starseed markings. There's many of them in this, that are going to be watching this, and you may be one as well. And it's nothing to be afraid of. It is a deeply karmic journey for the Draco to not have to, like, all of them be blasted back to space dust. And those who have come in as starseeds into this soul group are, very privileged to be able to come in and be part of the ground crew in terms of their redemption, right? Because the Draco are incredibly masterful geneticists, engineers, right? They really figured it out. So they used it to basically go and conquer and to live forever. And that was the other thing, because they did not, really heed this Chiron Rainbow Road Bridge. So I just want to let you know, this is, if you've seen it, taken a minute to really look at it. This is also posted on social media. This is their first session of the Catalyst Classroom, and we're going to look at Chiron all month, right? The astrology, the starseeds, connected to where Chiron is now, transiting Chiron, looking at where Chiron currently is and what to expect. It's in a retrograde right now. So that's something that if you subscribe to the second tier through Subscribestar, you have access to not only the video presentation, but also the slides that I create. So there's the Chiron, the bridge, truly the bridge between our material nature and our spiritualized consciousness, right? The bridge between Saturn and Uranus. And there's a great book by Barbara Hand Clow that is Chiron, the rainbow bridge between the inner and outer planets. And I just ordered it. So I am looking forward to actually reading it instead of just, I love to read, but so much lately I feel like I'm just picking up through osmosis. And as useful that it is in terms of time, I really enjoy the process of reading and my brain functioning like that. I mean, my 5th house is Gemini, so it's really where the voice shines, is in the function of the mind. So the other thing I want to share real quick, and I know I already did this, is that the lunar transit readings are now open for Virgo and Pisces. Just to give you a heads up, because we're going to have a Virgo new moon that's coming up, right, Virgo? That means we will have a Pisces full moon in the middle of September, actually September 10th. So this is something that if you are Virgo, Pisces, sun, moon, or rising sign, you can get the sale rate for the lunar transit forecast. Great time to book it now. So by the time we get to the new moon on the 27th, you already have a snapshot of how things may impact you personally based on your natal chart, your starseed markings, and your progression. So 30 minutes is $33 USD. I know that our currency is tanking, and I'm doing my best to mitigate that for all of us, but and 60 minutes is $66 US, and you're usually getting a lot more just in terms of time, just based on what I've been outputting so far. So I think it's a pretty good deal. So this is open for Virgo and Pisces people. You can go to catalystenergies.net. It's right on the homepage, and you can book from there. And then, of course, the Starseed Synastry. Boy, these readings have been blowing my mind. I knew that they would, but it is now that I'm like in the flow of it. Man, if you really are trying to find out those karmic ties or some sort of relationship dynamic to the starseed in your life that you're like, why? Or like, whoa, this reading is for you. So it's on sale for $88, catalystenergies.net. And you take you and some sort, whoever the partner is, and we look at your synastry chart, which is truly the astrology of relationship. And the themes that are coming out, like I said, mind-blowing. That's all I have to say about that. So again, homepage, catalystenergies.net, you can book right from there. So let's actually bring up the window. So here's our Schumann resonance, my friends. So let me see here. You know, what's interesting is that the sun, as forecasted by people who are worth their salt, as far as I'm concerned, in space weather, as forecasted, the sun is popping off like just, you know, like popcorn. It is just like flare after flare after flare, and not these like little B-class flares, but they are M-class flares, and just CME after CME, either coming near us or right at us. And certainly we had a coronal hole stream as well. So something to consider is that when there's lots of geomagnetic unrest and there's lots of flare activity, it is a mixed bag, okay? Because in some ways it is incredibly invigorating, and we get a huge upgrade and activation from solar, especially light, because light moves in a frequency, and but also too the plasma is having an impact, but also the magnetics of the planet are directly connected to our magnetic fields of all of the life, especially animals who are migrating, especially any kind of life form that depends, which is all of us, by the way, but there are some more than others that are obvious depending on the magnetic field and its distribution and the poles in order to migrate on a seasonal basis. Plants, they are absolutely dependent on the magnetics of the planet, and this more than any other time of year, especially in the northern hemisphere, it's the Virgo time where that becomes even more of a even more relevant, because again, all the action is under the surface, right? It's the entire hormonal balance of the plant has changed now, just like a pregnant woman is. It's all changing to focus on growing this fruit, right? And the fruit in a human or animal sense clearly is the fetus and the child, or, you know, the baby that is in fact the life that holds the genetic code of the next cycle, and is the seed point in you know, really basic ways, just like the plant. The fruit has the seed, and the seed will be disseminated through the part of the cycle where everything dies, basically. The fruit dies, we have the harvest, and along with that. So the magnetic field being weaker as the solar energy is amplifying is important. And so just being aware of also that the Schumann hasn't been doing too much during this time. We've been getting hit pretty hard with CMEs, with solar weather. The auroras are pretty strong, right? The KP index, right? Are you having a hard time sleeping? Are your dreams just like out of control? Are you having migraines? Are you having any number of like inflammatory types of experiences, either in your own mental health, your emotions, and certainly in the body? So that really does explain a lot of where there is density and there is, your own magnetics are all bunched up in your body. So that can be expressed in a lot of different ways. But what's interesting is that it's not that like, loud, except for this morning, like right at, I don't know, like 4 a.m. Eastern, there was a really like short burst up to like 70, but that was it, right? So it's not really doing much, but boy, was it doing a lot last weekend at the Lionsgate as we were preparing for this time. So the Earth knows, she knows, and she responds proactively, it feels like, in terms of getting us like magnetically aligned properly to be like, okay, now we can receive the full light of the sun's, flaring and bursting and its own cycle in a way that's actually impacting us positively. Just like vibration has an impact positively on DNA, for instance. So that's happening, and it has been happening. So if you're, and people have been making very drastic and strong changes this week. I'm pretty pleasantly surprised and almost like, wow, that was like right on time. And in ways where people, they're like, I just knew I had to do it. Like there was no rationality. It was just all in the feels. And I feel like that was Mercury and Uranus in a trine, right? I'm just like, it's, something has to be, there has to be some motion somewhere right now in order to tap into that collective or spiritualized consciousness of Uranus. So this is just the sun doing its flare thing, right? That was a big one that just happened yesterday. Again, M class. The higher the class, the more intense the CME, the plasma stream, right? And the more impact on the magnetosphere, which does have an impact on the global electric circuit. So expect earthquake watch. That's what I'm trying to say, because there is a lot of activity in that realm right now, and will continue to be so. So again, planetary index, the KP index, when it gets yellow, and certainly when it gets to red, that's a geomagnetic storm, right? And what is the storm? All the the electrical current and the balance of the magnetosphere is all out of whack, and so we become out of whack in some ways. And they weren't like super scary, but in some cases they got really, I think that it might have gone even higher, especially yesterday at some point. So that might have explained too how in the chat VZ talked about woke up really thirsty and then just eliminated it immediately. And that is a pretty strong indication, as you probably already know, of inflammation and a lot of energy needing to be redistributed elsewhere instead of in the, like if you've ever been really, really sick with a fever, for instance, that's a lot of what'll happen, right? You won't be able to even keep water down because there is nothing in your digestive system that is turned on at all, right? It is like we are in full clean out mode, and there are no resources to even take anything in. So it gets, and it's very inflamed. There's a lot of blood flow all over the place. So that's part of this as well. So, take care of yourself, please. It's very important. So here we go with today's chart, and I'm going to move this a little bit. And all right, friends. So here is actually the chart for the third quarter moon that was happening, like I said, 12:30 a.m. Eastern this morning, late last night on the west coast of the U.S., certainly much more into the early morning hours on the other side of the pond into Europe. And this is like I said, this is the galactic story of Atlantis and the Pleiades. And the sun is at 26 to 27 Leo at this third quarter moon. And this is always a time of inner reorientation, right? We have a crisis of consciousness because we've had a culmination moment at the full moon, if you remember, which was up in over here in Aquarius, conjunct Saturn. And now the moon has made its way into Taurus, which is a place that the moon likes to be. It's exalted in the sign of Taurus, meaning that it's still very powerful. Our emotional landscape likes to have a medium in order to settle into, much like the water will settle or percolate through the soil. And so there's still a sense of security emotionally in the material world when the moon is in Taurus. But it can get too I don't want to say attached, but too embedded. And this is why I feel like this degree of Taurus, 26 to 27 degrees of Taurus, is very often in ancient astrology and fixed star astrology, because it's conjunct Algol, or the head of the Gorgon or Medusa. The idea here that, bereavement and grief is a very deeply ingrained natural response to loss, right? It's not something that is something you can control. Do you understand what I mean? And this is why in Taurus it is something that you just experience, right? It's something that moves through you, and you are going to experience it regardless of how you consciously want to manage it, right? And when you are able to identify with grief and bereavement in that way as a physical, natural progression, there's nothing wrong with this, right? It's imperative that we allow ourselves to hold the stream of grief. And, the fifth house in Leo is truly where that grief can be expressed, right? And through our voice. And many times it's through crying, sobbing, wailing. It may even be anger, right? It may be just a powerful, just passionate explosion. That happens too, right? And when there are other factors that will hold us, right? Like Saturn over in Aquarius. The pressure of this intense structure now at the collective consciousness and spiritualized consciousness level. It can almost feel like it's crushing us individually in some ways, but it also is exactly what is giving a buffer or holding strong as we all individually may be going through a very powerful grief process and expression. It doesn't mean that you can't be excited or really exalted by what is coming forward later. And I think that is one of the biggest dynamics of this square, no matter when it's happening, where it's at in your chart. If it is, many star seeds have this square in their chart somewhere, this Leo Taurus square somewhere. It's something that this is the patience again, right? To allow ourselves the ability to really clear out that field, to be in balance. And maybe we do need this like really intense expulsion of that vital energy through through some manner of output, right? And maybe it is the sun in its expulsion that will balance the scales, right? It's just like lightning. Lightning is really just a function of natural homeostasis, right? The charge of the ions in the atmosphere is so out of balance that nature will find the balance. Those ions will find balance. The electrons will move where they need to move, according right now to the way we understand electricity, in order to balance out that charge. And the result is a lightning bolt. And which really does seem to be connected much more to Aries in terms of the spark, right? It is the electrical spark, but it is really combust and released in Leo. And just be easy on yourself. Give yourself the opportunity to feel into this like challenge and conflict of like, well, my heart is so ready to go on. I'm sorry I had to even say it, but it's true. Oh my gosh. But it is. It's like being aglow with all the promise of the illumination that we have gathered as a result of going through this really intense crises within ourselves. But to also not forget the process of the body catching up, right? And the body having an adjustment to this moment as well. And to, if it's grief, to let it out. If it's a sense of, if it's in your body, and it's something you're holding on to energetically from other situations, how do you give it the space to reach its maturation and be released, right? I think this is individual to all of us, but the general overlay of the story has to do with the grief around Atlantis and how it was probably very avoidable, but, people made their decisions at that time. And there are many starseeds that are across they are spanning the spectrum of how they've participated in that lifetime. And some of us have really holding, I wouldn't say a burden, but the burden of having been on the wrong side of history in that one and bringing that in now. Actually, there's a lot of us that are coming in with that. And certainly many Pleiadian starseeds are feeling the grief of that situation, and just allowing here comes the sage again. I don't even realize I'm doing it until I notice that, like, oh, I'm talking about something that really wants to have the assistance of being cleared away. So sage is really powerful for that type of clearing away, right? Salt will balance out any type of energy field, but there's something about sage in particular that it's not in itself an astringent smell, but it is potent and powerful, and it does kind of provide that same experience. Like, it just strips away everything and helps neutralize it. That's the word I'm looking for, right? And there are lots of things in nature that do that, and there's a lot of things that we can do individually that do that. So this is our third quarter moon. This has already happened. So in the last quarter, right, we're leading up to our balsamic moon, right, where things are getting really distilled. Again, this is patience, right? We really need to execute some patience for what's maturing, and that's very difficult to do when you're ready to go. You're ready to move on, and you got such a strong yearning to actualize yourself that without the adjustment in our emotional landscape, our own subconscious, and certainly in the connection to our body right now, we could do some damage to ourselves. And it's the same thing with like the solar energy without a magnetic field to buffer and to, manage that influx of high energy particles, which is plasma. So we have, there are other ways right now that we are doing this, which is creating that toroidal field within ourselves from our own hearts, right? And that comes through compassion. That comes through a sense of, empathy for everybody going through their own process, and for ourselves. My gosh, like, just, self-forgiveness is so hard. And when you are looking at the ways that you have just betrayed yourself, and that has led to you hurting other people or just doing things you're not really necessarily proud of, that is a Leo trait in general. If you're not proud of it, how can you feel the promise of the illumination? I think the healing is the part of it that allows you to see the full picture of those types of experiences. And actually what just popped into my mind, strangely enough, if you remember the movie Signs, which was filmed in the county that I grew up in, was born in Bucks County. And that's where it was filmed, is in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And in fact, that pizza shop that they filmed that one scene in, if you've ever seen Signs, like that's the town that I first grew up in. My dad's from, and his dad's from, and his dad is from, right? I got a huge lineage in early colonial Revolutionary War Pennsylvania. So and you understand Signs at the very end of the movie, it all comes together, right? And you realize that every piece, despite how painful it's been. And I mean, the main character walks away from his faith and his role as a faith leader because of these very painful experiences of losing his wife so tragically. And as it all comes together, he's like, oh, and the whole pattern is revealed. But there is a patience, and there are so many dark nights embedded in that whole process that you lose your faith all along the way if it's not already lost. So the thing is about this is that Mercury is in this degree of Virgo that is really about this. Are you going to step into the role of a lineage that has been passed down? Are you able and willing to step into some sort of kind of royal office, quote unquote, and what is it going to take? And this is what Mercury is like, crunching the numbers, doing the analysis, right? Organizing our thoughts, organizing our resources. That's a big part of it too, because Virgo is an earth sign. So, and patience, right? The amount of patience that is meant to be exhibited right now into this, right now, today in particular, is about taming the beast. And I think this is something that we've really struggled with collectively, taming our vital energies, or not realizing that we even have them, because we need to tame them. So, been watching the whole Star Wars catalog again, my partner and I, and really deconstructing it now. So the episodes 4, 5, and 6, if you don't know, Joseph Campbell was all over those, which is why they are so poignant, right? They really get to a place in all of ourselves that the hero's journey, right? That we didn't even know when I was a kid. I had no idea that's what it was. It was just cool. But it's speaking to something that is an abstraction, that is embedded in the, it's according to Carl Jung, the human psyche of experience. So one of the things that when you look at the transition from Anakin to Darth Vader, right, it is his passion that fuels his power, but he is not able to tame them when he is facing real trauma and pain. And he really does. He experiences the things that all of us are the most afraid of, right? He loses his mother. He never even had a father, right? He loses Padme, the whole thing, right? And so he lacked complete control over these energies, which were his passions, right? And so he had to overcome his pride, which he didn't, in his strength and his mastery, in order to really display his character and skill and to fulfill, his destiny. And he failed that test, right? Or perhaps he was meant to play that role from the beginning, because it was that role of him going all the way to the dark side, except for this one little nugget of light, which was his children. And then brought it back, right? And so it's the same thing. You get taken to the limit of what you think you can withstand. And this, I'm telling you, this Pleiadian third quarter moon and this connection to the last couple of eclipses it's going to get more. It's going to get more into this zone now, right? Where we have a lot of support to ground us and for us to embody this exaltation, what it feels like to come out of the dark night with strength and faith, because we've been tested and we have passed, right? This is Venus and Leo actually right now. Venus being what? The ruler of Taurus. And this is in a trine exactly to Antares as well. So it's a powerful and stinging truth with Antares, but it's also for our own good and is very much part of the dark feminine Antares. It's got a very strong feminine quality. It's in the heart of the Scorpio constellation. So, but this is not at the truth, or it's not at that Sagittarius level where it's the full meaning of all of it. It's still here in Leo. There's something, we just had the trine with Jupiter, speaking of Sagittarian ruled things, also in Aries, also in a trine to Antares, actually. This would be like this perfect fire trine if we had anything up here in Antares, in Sagittarius, but we don't, not right now. But still, there is a strong, how to tame that fire. And Venus in Leo, boy, this is the strength card all day, because it is the feminine that really tames the beast, right? And not repress the beast or our passion, tames it. And what is Venus in Taurus? It's our magnetic field, right? It's natural harmonics of the planet. It is the magnetic field of the planet, right? And our own field. So there is, we can embody and hold the full experience of that vital energy and coming out and seeing the sun rising because we have passed through the darkness, right? It's kind of like the dew in the morning where you're like, oh, I see that it's not quite light yet, but I know that it will be because these types of things are showing up before the sun really, really comes up. And so there's something here with Venus and the embodiment of this and our ability to embody our own passion, our own joy. And that in itself will be like the sun rising in the east after the dark night. The ability to embody this and to and experience that joy. If we can do that, it's going to have such a powerful effect on what otherwise is a very intense third quarter moon. And this whole week, right? It's not like the third quarter moon happens and then you don't have to think about it. This whole week is going to be that inner reorientation about this, right? But you can see where all of the personal planets right now, especially Mercury and Venus and Mars, trine Pluto before it moves into Gemini, is really this moment of like, just, the energy of intense drive, the energy of the truth, the energy that Pluto and Scorpio, or Pluto and Mars both rule, is the Scorpio energy. So for them to be connected to each other, it is power and acting on that power. And that's something that's already happened, but it's still very strong, right? Still only within the 3 degrees of where it was exactly in that trine. So it's still kind of Mars is still kind of holding that energy before moving into Gemini. And that's something, again, the patience, this groundedness, this sense of knowing when to act and what to act on, and to gather our power and strength from something that maybe we didn't even know that we had, because it's like a superpower, right? Pluto, especially in its retrograde, is just like these deep repressed energies that can be transformed into power. Please, yeah, we got to keep this in mind. As Mars moves into Gemini, it's going to be really easy to get pulled into that civil unrest. They're kind of counting on it. That's, and we got a long time with Mars and Gemini. So we got this is where our warrior is truly tested. So let's move to tomorrow, which is Saturday, and the 20th. So the moon does move into Gemini, speaking of which, and the moon and Mars will be conjunct at 30 degrees Taurus before that happens. So even in that moment too, where there is an emotional overlap with this, trigger that's ready to be pulled with Mars of, we really are a consummation of everything that has come before us, and the natural harmonic cycle of life, right? And so we're just an expression of it in this moment. And so this conjunction, I think, is really important to bring that emotional awareness to that, that hairpin trigger, right, of Mars ready to just off the starting line coming into Gemini. So, and then the moon will move through Gemini the whole weekend, right? So also, at least in some ways, I guess we'll get this opportunity to do the battle within ourselves. And I think that's going to be annoying and also very important. The moon is going to be in a sextile to Venus, and it's okay, because again, Venus, there seems to be this balancing. Let's find out where we are here. There, this kind of like, this big oak tree, and you have, and you have a swing on it, and there's this part of yourself that's just swinging all over, and it's able to like swing this way and spin around, right? If you ever had that tire swing as a kid, right? And all of the ways that the individual consciousness starts to really, explore and expand and to have fun, because there is something so deep and so powerful and so entrenched as an oak tree, right? These ancestral roots that's holding the tire swing. And that's important to consider as the moon in Gemini, makes this connection, this sextile, right? You can see this blue line that's right here. And in fact, if we just go a couple hours, we'll probably see it more clearly, because now we're going to start kind of doing the swing within ourselves, right? And so again, the Venus embodies what is valuable to us at like a sense-based level. And that's not a negative thing unless you choose to be possessive and greedy and slothful, right? Those are all like, and stubborn. Those are all those, dark side of Taurus. But relationships that are really meaningful to us and how we feel in them, right? Our resources, our material existence, right? Our land, our, the thing that puts income, right? What has value to us that is just in the world around us. And Venus is the agent. This is how we pull towards us what it is we need. And so we may find ourselves like almost attracting in, that sense of groundedness, so that we can kind of, allow ourselves the opportunity to kind of swing into a new place. And it's just going to be subtle. It'll be something within ourselves, right? This is where the patience is still very much at play, but the moon is starting to, it's going into Gemini and kind of giving us a preview emotionally of how this Mars time may play itself out over the next couple of months. And it's just Venus and Leo right now. I think people for the most part don't realize how incredibly powerful they actually are. And so this is going to be in terms of their bodies, in terms of their physical nature, right? And their senses and their feels in their senses. It's very powerful. So, and vital, right? And so the sun is just more of the same, right? It's just the expression, it's just the illumination. Venus, on the other hand, is actually able to hold the intensity of it, and the passion is translated into a type of strength. Strength that can only come from the feminine aspect of ourselves, and certainly the more magnetic part of ourselves. So, but we are coming into new territory, and we're feeling it. The moon through Gemini all weekend is going to be feeling it, okay? Now, and as we come into, like, what else is going to be happening? There's a big, the moon will sextile Chiron. It's going to, again, these sextiles, I think, are some of the greatest aspects in astrology, because they are the moments of personal transmutation that is harmonious and really empowering. So, again, the moon will be in a sextile to Chiron, and since we're covering that all month in the Catalyst Classroom, it seems like it's important to at least give it some attention, because it's right on the cusp of this major opposition with Mercury and Neptune. And Neptune in this position of Pisces, this is where it was at the Carrington event. Almost exactly to the Carrington event in 1859 in its retrograde, by the way. So, but also just this kind of Carrington event into the early 19 to mid 1860s when we had the Civil War. It's kind of interesting that I'm going to Gettysburg this weekend, don't you think? Also, too, that my South Node is right here. And that means my Mercury is going to be on my North Node. So talk about attention here in terms of what I'm, eye on the prize right here and now, in the incredible, powerful, overwhelming deluge of cathartic purification that Neptune and Pisces is representing right now. So, a mud flood, perhaps? Wow. And some of you guys are into that. And, take it for what is worth to you, right? Get behind the things that are valuable to you. But this moon in sextile to Chiron, leading up to this point, though, I think is another one of those really important moments of personal transmutation where, we are, when we allow ourselves to kind of tap into, the somewhat hidden energies of nature, right? It's not just us. It's actually a relationship with what's around us as well. And it's real subtle. We don't totally understand it. We just know that it's there. Again, this is going to be an opportunity to share the good word. Maybe it's just within ourselves. Maybe we have to exteriorize this experience emotionally, and it may be expressed outwardly, but you may find that it just gets expressed emotionally for yourself. You may have a dream that shows kind of this healing moment where you become aware in your own subconscious now, here and now, of the ways that you've held yourself back or kept yourself from bridging your material and spiritual consciousness through shame, through guilt, through just like shutting down that channel. Oh man, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to start really waking up now and realizing how much they've been shutting down their own intuitive channel at the expense of somebody else's disinformation pumping into their minds. So you may find yourself like, oh wait, now this could go completely the opposite. So this is where this choice and free will engaged in astrology. It's just, these are just potentials here based on these patterns. If you are not, if you are really just blind and willfully ignorant at this point of like where your own healing capacities are, where you have kind of not allowed your material reality to bridge into your spiritual consciousness, then you're just gonna be a mouthpiece for something else, right? And I don't think anybody here is necessarily going to be having this experience. This is going to be something where people who have an agenda that is much more about control and ego are going to find themselves attempting to utilize this in some way to push on people's buttons of shame and guilt for who they are, to get them to express some sort of message, right? Get very proselytizing and preachy. So that could also happen as well. So just be aware of these dynamics because, again, Mercury opposite Neptune, this is kind of like a reality check with what you have been feeling intuitively or experiencing at a subconscious level, in the unseen, in the collective unconscious or the cosmic realm, right? The astral realm. Mercury in Virgo is like, well, that's great, but we're here right now. And you have to be very cognizant and mentally focused on what it's going to take to really fulfill your destiny, whatever it is, right? And that's, again, for those who may have a lot of starseeds, they have this Pisces Virgo axis in their chart and it's all square to Orion. So if you have experiences that are related to this, you have points here, just be aware that this is building and is going to be exact. And what do you do with an opposition? You find the fulcrum. You find the balance. You don't want to get lost in the deluge and be like, oh, it's inevitable, because it is. But you also have free will and choice, and your mind, your consciousness is not who you are in those past iterations. That's something that is one of the things I'm working on right now because of some things that have some decisions and some actions that we're taking in different experiences. So this is a bit of a reality check here, but it's an important one as well. And also giving us that sense of like real patience and resoluteness, like what it actually takes. You have to know exactly when to act. Mercury coming into Libra by the end of this week, leading up to the new moon, is going to be one of those moments where we get a window into our own mind of what is that perfect equilibrium balance. And it will be that much more intense when we get to the equinox. So the 21st, as we move, let's move forward here to 21st, which is Sunday. You can see that this Mercury Neptune opposition is still really strong. The moon and Saturn will be in exact trine. This is going to bring up all that Mintaka stuff, right? The Mintakan starseeds. These are starseeds that come from a water world that is a part of the Mintaka system. It's in the belt of Orion. And this is a world that was destroyed, right? And so the Mintaka starseeds that are here are not only, it's like a double whammy because of Atlantis, and also because of even that experience. So it's all coming in to converge here, and this trine, and that's where Saturn is. Saturn's been in a trine to Mintaka now for quite a minute. Ever since it kind of moved into orb, which I would say is about 23 degrees Aquarius, moving in its retrograde, which means it's going to come back over this point. So this is still, the pressure of this experience is not lost on people, right? Especially Mintakan starseeds. But this moon in a trine here, this degree is how they did it. How did the Mintakans get out of the regressive Orion pattern and still manage to, how did they not even feed into the regressive Orion reptilian agenda, but still be very much from the Orion system? They had it figured out. They had some sort of organic bioenergetic process of a couple dancing. And it goes back to the lovers, right? The Gemini card in the tarot deck. Mintakan starseeds, they have an innate frequency at a soul level of having figured out in that the Orion system how not to be the regressive reptilian controlling AI version. They did pay the price for it because they eventually got destroyed. Kind of like in, again, the Star Wars, especially in New Hope, where the Death Star just destroys Alderaan, right? And the entire planet is just destroyed. So there's this idea here that there's something there that is really important right now. Pallas Athena is sitting right here as well. And so the moon will come into conjunction with Athena. This is the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and war, right? And so not all of those lessons necessarily need to be lost in this situation, right? This is about, the organic process of using polarization in a way that is like two people dancing, right? Or the lovers. It's a commitment, and there's a movement here, right? There's a movement that implies that there is an active process and not just two of these positions firmly entrenched in their stances, right? And this is important. This is going to be one of those things that emotionally ties right into giving us that emotional security and authority and a sense of, for those of us who haven't taken for granted the last 2 years of the North Node in Gemini and really approached duality without all of the anger and passion and, even just instinct is not bad, but when we are approaching something like this with pure warrior instinct without the magician to kind of make sense of it, right? Or to really master this realm, then this is where we're going to get Mars in Gemini. And this is where we're going to get a lot of civil unrest trying to be pushed. So this right here, boy, this is going to be an important part for us emotionally this weekend to get ourselves into the right emotional place about duality and polarization, right? And spiritual warfare, whatever that means to you. And really getting clear with yourself about your own soul journey and our collective journey with this concept. So, and I don't have all the answers, and I'm also vacillating all the time, right? And again, my 5th house is Gemini. That is the Aquarius 5th house. And so it's taking yourself out of it in order to truly enjoy the process of the dialectic and the mental polarization to get smarter, to gain more knowledge, to know, right? Is is where the Aquarius person, the Aquarius rising person, truly is finding their joy. So don't squash yourself, Aquarius, because this is your 1st and 5th house, for instance. So that's just an example, right? And I am biased because I have this Aquarius, and I'm very transparent about my astrology. Not everybody is, and I totally respect that. In fact, I think you have to be the person that's transparent about it, because it can be used against you. It really can. Oh, here comes the sage again. So, clearly, it's important. If you're going to be transparent, you're going to be vulnerable, you're going to put yourself out there, it's best not to take for granted all of the things that led you to this point, that you feel at least safe and comfortable enough to do so, okay? And that's a big part of this trine, just in general. The 21st, let's see here. We got the opposition to Neptune, and the moon is going to have a bunch of mutable squares to, in fact, the moon is going to be in a T-square, actually, by the end of Sunday. This is pretty interesting. A T-square with this opposition, as we're going to see, right? Ooh, that's beautiful. Look at that T-square. So an opposition and a T-square is where you have a point that's in square to both ends of the opposition. So this is one of those transits that allows you to, in this case, draw the energy into the emotional and subconscious intuitive landscape, in order to really prune away what is unnecessary, what is growth that is erratic and not going to yield anything, and also in order to and to really accept kind of like the essential archetype of our own subconscious and intuitive nature, like to really feel into, it eventually gets to a point where you see that it's just polarization, and everything that gets attached to it is just a costume, right? It's just a word or a designation, and it's not that those things don't matter, but when you get down to the energetic template of any type of polarity, then that's where you start to really master yourself and your own consciousness, and you cut away what is unnecessary, right? You realize that if you want fruit to bear, you're going to have to prune that plant, and this is something that is essential. This T-square is pretty powerful when it comes to the purification at a soul level with Neptune in Pisces and Mercury in Virgo, that is just like, so meticulous about, like, and is truly like the Mary Magdalene and the Jesus, not the Christ. The Christ is the Neptune in Pisces. Mercury in Virgo is the human avatar of Jesus, and Mary together, honestly, if you really want to think about it. But the Mercury aspect of it is the more feminine aspect of Virgo, or Virgo is the more feminine pole of Mercury. Because Mercury has got this duality to it, right? Just like Gemini. And Virgo still has duality too, but it's the blending of duality. So, again, we can play with the ideas all day long, and there's something very valuable about that. And it's really important that we have a handle on what polarization and dialectic really is for, ultimately, and like I said, cutting away, pruning everything that is not going to yield something later, and that's going to really help. Even though it's in a mutable square to these positions, it'll really help balance out this otherwise very precarious, or like a tug of war, right? Imagine if these two are at a tug of war and somebody comes down and just pulls that third rope and just like yanks them both over, right? It's just like it all has so much to do with what's happening within our own selves and how we are cutting away all of the shit that's not necessary. And that's very difficult when you have to be patient about it too, and you're just like, I'm done with this already. And I'm not suggesting that there isn't some value to this like spontaneous experience, and that's a big part of Uranus, right now. And so let's look at that, because Uranus is going to station retrograde this week. So we come into Monday, and we're really starting to finish up some things, because the sun is coming into the last degree of Leo. Mercury is now coming into a trine with Pluto. Mercury being the shepherd of souls in a lot of ways, right? And that is, I mean, if that's not a Jesus statement, I don't know what is. But in Greek mythology and Roman mythology, Hermes and Mercury was also the shepherd of souls, right? For those who were getting lost, getting to the underworld, Mercury was able to shepherd those souls where they needed to go without getting trapped. Nobody else was really able to do that, because Mercury is the Logos and able to master the Logos, just like Jesus was able to master not only the Logos, but the material form, the perfection of the material form to hold that Logos, and then becoming the Christ, right? Becoming that Christ 888 representation, right? Which is very much this Neptune and Pisces. And so Mercury in a trine to Pluto, right, coming into Monday, again, this Earth trine of just in the presence of what is going through demolition and destruction and the release of repressed energy with Pluto here in Capricorn at the institutional level. We can at least conceptualize our participation in a divine way, in a sacred way, in a ritualistic way, as part of this whole process. And I think that really gives us a sense of empowerment, again, to something that can be so overwhelmingly powerful at the institutional level, that we could, again, just kind of give into it or think, there's nothing that can be done. This is exactly the same shit that's been happening over and over. And so I'm just gonna leave myself to dissolve into this process once more as a soul. And you're going to see that happening, right? That's going to be happening with this opposition, with, it's going to set the tone of like, can you do it or not? And people are going to exit. There's going to be another big round of them, I think, August into September for sure, because of, the soul really. Is it able to integrate, or the spiritualized consciousness? Is there going to be an integration into a perfected, upgraded, mature form or not? That's individual to each of us. But Monday with this Mercury trine Pluto is at least for those who maybe have really, really taken this weekend and the time to really allow these processes to kind of unfold within themselves. You may be like, okay, this is like a practice round here, right? And it may come through communication. It may come through some sort of like utilization of resources, problem solving, organization, things like that. You're not creating new resources. That's Scorpio. You're just using what is around you to influence and ripen, right? And so part of that process is also the fact that there has been this ongoing destruction in the entire forest, right? But that doesn't mean there's not new potential and growth. And that's a big part of this cycle as well. So Tuesday is the 23rd, right? We're not going to, the moon's going to come into Cancer. It is going to cross over Black Moon Lilith, meaning that the moon will be at its apogee or furthest away in its orbit. So it'll seem really small, and it's going to be a dark moon. So it'll be really, really a time where you should, the inner reorientation is happening, right? You are restructuring your own consciousness in the face of a culminating moment, and starting to get into that balsamic phase where it's very distilled, and it's very important to just be with this and in a type of stillness as we go through next week. There'll probably be more space energy coming. Venus will be in a trine to Chiron in its retrograde, and I think that if we've been embodying this passion and strength through relationship, through value, through worth, through our own magnetic field in many ways, I think that, again, another one of those beautiful healing moments like we had at the 8-8 where the Sun and Chiron were in a trine. Now it's way more in the feels of the body and in the realm of actual value and magnetism, as opposed to just this brilliant, beautiful, shining, heart-opening moment of healing. So it may not be necessarily, it may feel like you kind of have to like push something out of the ground in some ways, like that passion card in the tarot, especially in the Thoth tarot. But the strength too, I think, is going to be a big healing moment as we go through the week. I want to make sure that yeah, there we go. I get all the big ones of, and the sun will have entered Virgo, right? Wednesday as well. So you see the sun has entered Virgo. Uranus is stationed by the 23rd into the 24th as well. So that's a big deal as well. And it's going to be retrograde for a while, right? Like 4 months-ish. And we can look more in depth at that in Uranus's retrograde cycle. But Mercury is, Venus is going to trine, like I said, Chiron. Uranus will station retrograde on the 24th. On the 25th is when, Mercury enters Leo. Or Libra, I'm so sorry. So Mercury will have entered Libra at this point on the 26th. Super duper balsamic moon, very dark moon. Oh, look at that, in Leo. There's going to be some stuff down there that we just have to let it be. Like, just let it be. There's not anything we can necessarily do about it. We're just going to feel it. Venus is going to be in a T-square to the nodal axis of the moon, right? And so, again, that T-square is taking the energy or giving a place for that oppositional energy to go in Leo. And this is like, wow. Again, it's going to feel almost what we're doing in real time right now in our relationships and in the world of value to us, and how we're each participating in some sort of togetherness by being ourselves in our true nature and expressing that. It's there will be tension with something much deeper that is driving us, which is to almost get pulled into the distillation of the polarization in and of itself, and how that can generate power for us. And this T-square, I think, is, again, especially because the dark moon is here in Leo as well, it's this moment, and this is by next week, right? We get to our new moon on the 27th, which is going to be Saturday, and it's in Virgo. Mars is already in Gemini at this point, and it'll be in a square to the sun in Virgo. So there you see that fundamental experience and tension, ultimately, with acting on the dialectic of ideas and concepts and information as if there are only two sides, and the sun that is in Virgo that's just like, well, that actually, there's a third thing here, which is the fruit that is holding the seed. And in fact, this is where we're going to really be focusing, which, again, patience for the maturity, patience for the ripening. Mars has no patience. And once it moves out of Taurus, I mean, it's going to, like I said, it's just going to open out the gate and be ready to act on this spiritual war, or whatever the dichotomy, represents for you in particular. So the new moon in Virgo is on the 27th, and it's going to be an early Virgo. And I think this is where we really can start allowing the stirring of that third piece to start becoming part of our own consciousness, right? I mean, if we stay trapped in the feedback loop of the binary code or the false base 10 system, right? I mean, it goes as far as the devotion and the commitment to the process, but without the decision, without the expression of a rebirth. I mean, you just get trapped here. And this new moon, thankfully, is going to challenge Mars for all of us to be like, hey, there's something new growing. There's something new growing and maturing. And over the course of September, we are going to see the fruits of that intention really come to, fullness by mid-September. And then we have our equinox on the 21st. So, patience, my friends, patience, and a sense of real appreciation for even the traumas, the triggers, the pain, and the grief that has come through, and to be open to support, nourishment, and to take the initiative to support your own healing process, and to allow the grief to be a natural process for you. So that's going to do it for today's astrology report, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're on here on the chat, if you are catching this on the replay, no matter what, I really do appreciate your presence, your participation, not only in this space, but just here, right? You are here, and we're all doing the best that we can, and that's important to consider as well. So be easy on yourself and other people as much as it allows, right? But also don't betray yourself in that process. Always be in your truth. But if you're coming from your truth in a heart space, you have no choice but to be compassionate and strong and vibrant at the same time. So there's going to be no Starseed ministry on Monday. I'm going to be out of town, so we will be back together on Tuesday for the Starseed ministry. We will check back in about all of this crazy astrology. Enjoy the weekend, be patient with yourselves and other people. We are growing something remarkable right now in the womb of life, I guess. And there's a lot of support, as always, right, from the cosmic framework that is infinite, right? God's matrix, not the material one that is, for the sake of its own regeneration and rebirth, will go through its own death process. Even the most minute subatomic particles are going to go through that process in this dimension of experience. So we accept our part of that, and we also realize that our connection to Source is infinite and never goes anywhere. And our whole role here as ambassadors, honestly, is to be part of the bridging of this process, which is why we're going to talk about Chiron, because I think Chiron, and so do other astrologers that I respect and whose work has been influential, Chiron really is the rainbow bridge in a lot of ways, right? The covenant that is experienced when we acknowledge where we come from and where we're going, and it's the process that's truly sacred. So, and the process that truly reveals its infinite potential to us. So, I'm just gonna keep burning this sage, for the sake of us all. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I really do truly appreciate each and every one of you. I'll see you on Tuesday for the Starseed Ministry. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.